You're listening to the Nourished Child Podcast, episode number 52.
Welcome to the Nourished Child Podcast, a show about childhood nutrition, feeding kids, and dealing with the ups and downs of growing a healthy child. Here's your host, registered dietitian and childhood nutrition expert, Jill Castle.
Hey there, welcome to the Nourished Child Podcast. I'm Jill Castle, your host, and you are in for a great episode today. Today, I am interviewing the founders and owners behind Super Healthy Kids. Today's episode is brought to you by the Kids Healthy Weight Project. This episode of the Nourished Child Podcast is brought to you by the Kids Healthy Weight Project course. Do you feel like you somehow missed out on the basics of nourishing your child? You probably did. Many parents strive to nourish their child well, but find themselves with lots of questions. In the Kids Healthy Weight Project course, you will get my blueprint for nourishing healthy children, inside and out. That means you'll get a food system that includes a balance of all foods, not a restrictive meal plan or diet, a feeding strategy that is proven to be effective and nurturing to children, and an infrastructure for building healthy habits and a lifestyle your child can grow on. Get the Kids Healthy Weight Project today by going to www.jillcastle.com/courses. So today I was scrolling through my Google alerts and Time magazine published an article called "These Are the Best Foods for Baby's Brain." And it's very interesting the amount of research that's coming out now about what babies need in that first 1,000 days or in that first 2 years of life in terms of nutrients, not just for their body growth, but really focusing on their brain development. So I shared that article on my Facebook page, and a follower commented, and I wanted to share the comment because I think that it is a very real comment where a lot of parents are coming from. And she says, "I was hoping to see more examples in this article. There was lots of, quote, you should feed babies foods rich in XYZ vitamins, but no, quote, such as, to follow it up. Mentioning that a lack of nutrition can lead to lifelong brain function issues without providing any real concrete examples is kind of fear-inducing. I think Time kind of missed an opportunity to inform rather than instill fear. It's almost as if they are saying, we know the answer, but we're not going to share. But you'd better figure it out or your child could have lifelong issues. Good luck, suckers." And she says, "I'm just one tired, stressed out, worried mom. That being said, I love your podcast and I found it very helpful in learning to feed my 17-month-old. We're still a work in progress here. Thank you for all you do." Well, I'm still a work in progress too, but I do want you to know and other listeners to know that I have a couple of handouts related to baby nutrition that can help. I have one handout that highlights those important baby nutrients that are crucial in that first 1,000 days, and I'll include the link to that in the show notes. And I also have another handout about baby feeding methods, so the variety of different methods that you can use to feed your baby, either by spoon or baby-led weaning or a combination of both. And it's a chart that really weighs the pros and cons of everything. So I'll include the links to that. I am working on a more richer handout in terms of food sources of those nutrients, which I'll be happy to share on the blog, and I'll let you know next time when I have that available to you. So today I am talking with the founders and owners of Super Healthy Kids. I've known Amy for a while now. She helped Marianne and I with our book Fearless Feeding by giving it a review and helping us promote it. And today is the first time I've met her partner, Natalie, and it was really great talking to them. I admire everything that they're doing over on their website, and as a business and as a resource for healthy, nutritious meals. And I oftentimes recommend their meal planning service to my clients who are feeling stuck with what to feed their children. but I want to just tell you a little bit about Super Healthy Kids. So, feeding your kids healthy food can be a challenge, but so rewarding. Amy Kelly and Natalie Monson both have children and know firsthand what some of the challenges can be. Amy has a bachelor's degree in health education, and Natalie is a registered dietitian. Together, they run the website Super Healthy Kids, where they share recipes that encourage parents to share healthy food with their kids in a variety of ways. So, without further ado, here's my interview with Amy and Natalie. Amy and Natalie, welcome to the Nourished Child Podcast.
Thank you for having us, Jill. We're excited to be here.
Well, I think I might be a little bit more excited because I got 2 for 1. I got both of you on the show today.
Yep, and I have Natalie here. She is my business partner, and I'm Amy.
Well, tell us, each of you, please, tell us about yourselves. And let's just say, I've already introduced you, but let's just remind everybody, you run the website Super Healthy Kids together.
Yes, we do. So I will just start. I'm Amy, and I have 3 kids. They are 19, 17, and one will be 15 in a couple of weeks. But I started Super Healthy Kids when they were quite little, just because I wanted a space where I could find and share some healthy, nutritious meals for them to eat and just encourage them to be healthier eaters. And so it's changed quite a bit for me because when they were young, they were more picky and selective about what they ate, but because I've made them the subject of the blog for so long, they were forced to become adventurous and follow along with all the crazy recipes we were trying. But yeah, so that's my family.
I'm Natalie, and I have 4 kids. Their ages are from 1 to age 9. And so my kids right now are really our target audience. And when I started Super Healthy Kids, I just had 2 little ones and they were very young. So it's been really fun to see my own children grow and develop through the processes we've tried with other parents. And we are just both really excited to be here with you today, Jill.
Aw. Well, you both live in I think anyways, the most beautiful states in our country, and that's Utah. How does that influence sort of your day-to-day life, your work, your playtime as a family?
You are right. We love Utah. There's so much to do outdoors, even in the winter. And so that has actually influenced our family's activities quite a bit. We spend the summers like canyoneering and hiking and rappelling on the red rocks of Moab and St. George. And in the winter, my kids get to snowboard and go sledding and even just building a fort in the backyard. So our Utah really does impact how much time we spend outside. And so my kids have become really good at being outdoors.
That's awesome. How about you, Natalie, with the younger sect of kids?
So kind of same thing. My husband and I have been involved in a lot of the outdoor activities like rappelling and canyoneering and all those. So we have had to modify with the younger children, but Utah is great because there are a lot of activities in the mountains that you can do with small children. There's easy hikes. We have beautiful waterfalls and different things that kids really love. And the other thing about Utah is there's a lot of kids here. So it's really been great for Amy and I because we can do market research right in our own neighborhoods with neighborhood kids and really get to see a variety of things in practice.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's such a gift, really. Now, I have to say, I have not heard the word canyoneering before, so give me a quick rundown about what that is. It sounds terrifying to me because I'm afraid of heights.
We have a lot of canyons in Utah where 2 mountains kind of meet together, and so there's like a slot between the 2. And to move through it, sometimes you need ropes, sometimes you have to climb through it, sometimes you're jumping around a lot. So canyoneering is basically rappelling or climbing with equipment to get yourself through that canyon.
Oh, wow. Again, that sounds a little intimidating for me.
It
but
is.
I guess if you grow up with it, you're probably very used to it.
Yeah. And you definitely want to go with someone who knows what they're doing because it can be dangerous, but It's really fun. A lot of people like to do it just because it's technical, and so you use a lot of different skills, but it's beautiful.
Oh, I bet. I bet. So, quite an adventure. And that kind of segues into let's talk about, super healthy kids and what it's all about. Because if I go to your website, I see, raising adventurous eaters and all these amazing recipes and meal plans that really do scream adventurousness in terms of eating.
Yes, it's something that we have really tried to focus our business on in the last few years because we've realized that it's one aspect that's really important in getting kids to eat foods that are healthy through their whole life.
Hmm.
We love to share all sorts of recipes because for us, the biggest thing is to give parents ideas because I think a lot of times even parents get stuck in a rut where they can only think of macaroni and cheese for dinner and sandwiches for lunch and cereal for breakfast. And so we're hoping with like sharing pictures and meal plans and recipe ideas that they can really expand their idea of what they could make for each meal and not have their kids get stuck in those food jags that I think we like give to our kids because we can't think outside of what's common.
Exactly. And I can say, when Marianne Jacobson and I wrote Fearless Feeding and we did a lot of our market research, that was one of the biggest questions that we were trying to address as well. And even though our book is less recipe based and more feeding and nutrition based, one of the questions that was pretty clear to us was this whole I need ideas for meals and I need ideas for snacks. And so I think you really are touching on a pain point for a lot of parents. It's that inspiration, the idea generator that you clearly provide on your website, which is great.
It's interesting because if you think about before blogging and the internet, everyone has lots of cookbooks at their house. So it is really evident that people need these ideas because they're searching through cookbooks and magazines. And we're just fortunate to live in a time where we have that space that we can share recipes to people throughout the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's amazing. So you do have three main beliefs about nutrition for kids. Can you share those with us and tell us why they are important to your business?
Okay, our first one, and we really feel strongly this is the most important thing, is that serving fruits and vegetables with every meal promotes health. And, no matter what health expert you listen to or what the research you're reading is, it always comes back to fruits and vegetables are without question the best thing you can do for your health. There's phytochemicals and nutrition and antioxidants and all the things that contribute to better health. And why this is a core part of our business is because if we can get our kids excited about fruits and vegetables and we can make it common for them to see that at every meal, then we really think that they'll be able to take that with them throughout their life. With my kids, we've had some sort of greens or side of vegetable on the plate at every meal for their whole life. And so that's just expected. They don't see a complete meal unless they see that we are eating vegetables with it. And so if you can make that a habit, then you win, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I've done that with my own children too. And starting very, very young, like starting when they started solids, that, there was always a fruit, there was always a vegetable, a grain, a protein. And it just is the norm. They grow up knowing that it is the norm. And I don't know if you find this, but I find that a lot of times parents forget about fruits and vegetables at breakfast. They might think fruits, but they don't think about vegetables. And I've always said, either or throughout the day, but aiming for 5 servings if possible. And that's a big jump for a lot of families.
Yeah, it is a big jump. And I think it goes back to what we were saying about just giving them ideas because they might not realize that vegetables can be common at breakfast. But then when you give them ideas like a spinach smoothie or mushrooms with their omelets or, there's a lot of ways we actually do make vegetables a habit at breakfast, even, with just giving them ideas for that.
Right. Yeah, no, that's great. Now, your second belief about nutrition for kids.
Jill, can I just add one quick thing about our first belief?
Sure.
So the other reason this is kind of a part of our core of our business is because there's so much nutrition information out there and it changes a lot. Like what's the best type of oil or what is the healthiest diet, low carb, high carb, whatever it is. But
Mm-hmm.
what we found that's consistent throughout all the research in all of these years is fruits and vegetables. And so
Mm-hmm.
we try to eliminate the confusion for people by having that fallback. Like, if you can't do anything else, if you're serving fruits and vegetables to your kids, you will be helping their overall health. And I feel like that's
Yeah.
really helped a lot of parents take some of the pressure off. Like, oh, okay, good. As long as I'm feeding him fruits and vegetables, I don't have to worry so much about if I'm using the wrong oil or whatever it is.
Right. So you're keeping it very simple and doable.
Yes.
That's great.
Okay.
So when you think about your 3 core beliefs, let's talk about your second belief.
Okay, so our second belief is eating in balance provides a positive relationship with food. And we've never bought into removing entire food groups. And, sometimes people think like, okay, well, you need to not eat grains or you need to not eat this. And we actually sell the Choose My Plate. We've developed our own for kids and adults and teens that promotes this balance. And we really feel strongly that eating all 4 food groups at each meal provides the best nutrition. And
Mm-hmm.
we help parents and families kind of see the visual of that so that they realize, like, instead of worrying so much about how many grams of this or how many calories or percentages of this, if they can look at their kid's plate and say, okay, I've got a fruit on here, a vegetable, a grain, and a protein, then they know they're providing balance and the nutrition that their children need.
And I feel like
Mm-hmm.
it also contributes to the kids' attitudes towards food when you're not focusing on what's forbidden. We get a lot of feedback at Super Healthy Kids where people are like, this isn't super healthy. Kids shouldn't eat sugar. Kids shouldn't eat this or that. And we just decided if we focus on what they should be eating, then the kids can not feel the shame, not feel the guilt, but yet they'll be full with all the good stuff that they should be eating instead. And part
Mm-hmm.
of this balance too, like I think we all have kids who love one food group. like
Yeah.
I mean, an obvious one is my kids love rolls, like a dinner roll. And so when we teach them this balance, this has happened more times in my life than I can count, but my kids will go for seconds of the roll or seconds of the rice or potato or whatever. And we say, oh, yeah, you can definitely have seconds, but also you should have seconds of everything else on your plate to keep it in balance. And then they reconsider, well, maybe I don't really need that roll anymore if I have to eat everything. But it just helps to
Mm-hmm.
remind them that it's okay to eat the roll because you're eating a balanced meal.
Right. And I think those quote unquote forbidden fruit messages are dangerous. They can be dangerous depending on the personality and temperament of the child. You can, have a more rebellious natured child who, when you take away all that sugar in the home, they become almost obsessed with it, seeking it out, overeating it when they have the chance. Sort of that out of control kid when they're around, sugary desserts and treats at parties or at school. And so I agree with you. Positive messaging and that whole philosophy of what can you fit in versus what do you take out is a platform for my business too. And the other comment I would make as a business owner is that at some point you have to just figure out what you stand for and stand behind what you stand for,
Yeah,
right?
Yes.
it's true.
You will not resonate with everyone, and that's okay.
Yes. This is true. I'm sure you get a lot of questions about sweets and treats and
Oh,
how
yes,
those
we
get
do.
and how those get fit into that balanced meal plan.
Yes.
So what do you say to a parent when they say, what about sweets? How can I fit
Yeah,
those in? Or
we actually do just reiterate like we're here to focus on the things your kids should be eating. And it's okay to not buy those things. You don't want to keep them in your house and say, let's eat this in moderation, because even I don't like to eat chocolate in moderation. So it's okay to not have them at home, but then also to understand that when your kids are at a school party or they're at a family gathering, that we're not going to feel bad for, eating enough to be satisfied, but not overdoing it that we feel sick.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that we talk about, which leads into our next point, we love cooking and creating with our kids. So if they wanted to make a batch of homemade chocolate chip cookies, there's more to it than just eating the cookie, out of like a box. There's connection, there's experience, there's memories all created into that.
Mm-hmm.
And having a cookie isn't going to make or break your diet. If, you're eating those balanced meals and you're getting your nutrition through balanced meals, having a cookie after your meal is totally part of that balance.
Mm-hmm.
And, just like you said before, if you take away all of that, kids do become obsessed with it. And I think causes more problems than it's worth.
Mm-hmm.
So balance in all things is my opinion. And that's how I teach my children as well, because I don't want them obsessing like, where can I get this candy? Oh, if I go to someone else's house, then I'm sure they have it and I'll eat it there. Because kids will find a way. As soon as they ever leave your house, you lose that control. And so teaching them balance helps them take it with them wherever they are.
Exactly. And I just want to also just circle back to something that just entered my head. Are you familiar with Gretchen Rubin? She wrote the Happiness Project book and has written several books, but in one of her books, she talks about personality types. And I found this fascinating. And she, of course, supports everything she writes with research, but she talks about personality types and that some people are very black and white. They can get up on January 1st and say, okay, I am not having any more wine. I'm not having any sweets for the month of January. And they're very black and white. They decide, they follow through. They can have all those foods around them, but they've made that decision and they can stick to it. And what she argues is that these messages of moderation don't serve those people well because they're not moderate. Their personality isn't moderate. They can't, have the sweets around and look at them and be like, okay, I'm off sweets for the month of January. I'm not going to do this. So it's interesting because my husband is a person like that. Like he can just be like, okay, I gotta clean things up and I'm not going to have this and I'm not going to have this. And just, I'm going to be on my exercise routine, and he can just snap to it. And I am the opposite. I am a moderate. I like having that stuff around. And sometimes I'm not moderate with it, but my personality is like, if it were never around, I tend to seek it out. So it's an interesting way of thinking about, and it always makes me think about children and their personalities when I think about, strategies and tactics that can work for certain kids when I'm working with families, because I do want to know, is your child a child who is going to be driven for anything that you take away from them, or are they okay with that? And there are kids that I think go with both. So have you noticed that at all with your own children or in any of the families that you work with?
Yes, I think that contributes intensely to the idea that even kids in our own family can have those different personalities and they can respond so differently. And it's funny because parents want solutions to help their kids be better eaters, but you can't have a one size fits all answer for a family, even because their kids will all be so different. Our experience with that is we interviewed a local lady. Her name's Carol Tuttle, and she has a book called The Child Whisperer. And she does put each child in that has these different personalities and how you treat them differently in, just in behavior and raising them and in feeding them. And some kids, they're bossy and they want to be in charge. And so you would let them be in charge of the meal for the day. And then some kids just are really respond to community and sympathy. And so for them, having the table experience where you just like sit and enjoy each other's company helps them feel better when they're eating. And so, yeah, kids are all different, and we definitely have to learn how they tick to be able to feed them appropriately.
Such a great point, really.
Okay. I will add to that, though.
Sure.
No matter your children's personality, I have yet to find a child who likes to be controlled. And so I think, like whether they're, the self-motivated type where they can just get rid of all the sweets, if you're trying to make that choice for them, I feel like most kids kind of have some backlash. If they make that choice, then they're all for it. But if you make that choice for them, it's a different story. No matter your children's personality, they all like to make choices.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I would also even add on top of that, even though we have families filled with different kids and different eating personalities, we still need sort of a structure and a way that we do feeding in the home and the way that we balance our meals. We need to have that so that it applies to everyone, and then be sensitive to those different personalities as well.
Definitely. I totally agree.
Okay, are we ready for
number 3?
The third main belief.
Yeah, sharing meals creates happy memories and healthy habits for life. And we already touched on this a little bit, but the eating culture goes beyond the nutrition and beyond what we're putting in our bodies. But community and connecting and creating memories with our kids can be far more important than what you're sitting down to eat. And I think it's important for families to understand that, because they can get frustrated and they can get, the dinner table can be a source of disappointment and stress. But when you let that go and you just like use that as a time to connect with your kids instead and take the drama away from what the kids are eating, then the kids will develop better relationships with their food and have better experiences with the family and a more positive idea about what food is in our culture. And, and again, it's so much a part of our culture. We love parties and we love going out to eat with friends. And, it's all about the people we're eating with. And I think that we can't lose that, as it's almost as important to a child's health as what they're eating themselves.
I agree. Most definitely.
Yeah, eat together.
Yeah. Boy, if every family could figure out a way to eat together several times a week, that would be amazing.
Well, and there's a lot of emotion tied behind food. So that's something we are really trying to promote this year, is the idea of connected cooking. And if you talk to most adults, they will have a memory associated with food like, oh, my mom used to make this and it was the best, or we ate this on Christmas morning, or people really tie in emotionally to food. And that's an important part of creating healthy habits, is the idea of sharing good, wholesome food at home with your families, and not just, okay, eat this broccoli, because those are not the type of memories we want to create for our children.
Right. And boy, to me, it seems like in my experience, kids who grow up to be teenagers and college kids and adults, they remember the negative. They don't necessarily remember the positive. I mean, it's like the positive is there as the foundation, and they do remember the positive, but the negative really stands out.
Especially if it's repeated negative. If
exactly
dinner for them means like getting nagged to eat something they don't want to, that will stick with them.
Absolutely. So those negative feeding practices can be pretty damaging.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to your relationship with your followers and the parents that are on your website and following your blog. What do you see are some of their main worries or concerns about their children?
So probably the number one thing we get from parents is, my kid won't eat blank. And, that's different depending on the child, but parents really are concerned that their kids won't eat the healthy food they want them to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really feel like by the time somebody comes to our website, they're not necessarily looking for what their kids should be eating. They've already decided, okay, I want my kid to eat more fish because I heard that that was good, or I want my kid to eat more broccoli. And so by the time they get to our website, they're just exploring ideas on how they can get their kid to eat a specific food. And Natalie actually has observed this. She was at a family party a few weeks back, and she was noticing her sister-in-law so concerned. There was a buffet of food on the counter, and the sister-in-law was watching her child and saying, and watching Natalie's children and saying, "Oh, I wish my kid would eat as much salad as your kid is eating." And like she was just so concerned that her child wasn't eating the salad. And so it comes down to she decided my kid should be eating salad. Other kids are eating the salad. I need to figure out how to get mine to do the same thing. And so that's what they come to us for. And I really feel like we provide a solution for them because we do have so many different ways to prepare vegetables and foods that parents are trying to get their kids to eat.
Mm-hmm. That's great because there are so many ideas there that parents can get variation on the things that their children already like, and they can get inspiration for things that they want their children to eat and like. And so there's all that packed into what you offer parents, which is so great. Do you hear about picky eating at all, or eating too much, or any of those concerns?
So, picky eating is a commonly used term for the concerns parents have. And I almost think it's kind of mislabeled because parents use the term picky eating for so many things. Like if their kid won't eat something, they're a picky eater. And Amy and I really believe that the term picky eating is so broad because every child is different. There's so many reasons kids won't eat food. And it's not just because they are what we have coined picky eater, you know? And some children may have clinical reasons they won't eat food. Some may be from different personality traits or behaviors they've learned. There's just so many different reasons. And so when a parent comes to us and says, I have a picky eater, they won't eat, whatever, we really try to help them explore and look at why their children isn't eating that food. And for some, it may be they need to go and see a professional and work with a clinician because there's reasons there. But the thing that we feel like we're the best at helping parents with is those children who maybe have tried a food a few times and haven't liked it, and they've listened to the philosophy, well, I need to feed my kid this food 10 times and then they'll like it. And we believe you don't need to feed your kid steamed broccoli 10 times and then they'll like it. You need to feed your kid broccoli in 10 different ways because
Mm-hmm.
the way you prepare it, it changes the flavor, it changes the texture, it changes the color. And
Mm-hmm.
a different way may appeal to your child. You know, roasted broccoli tastes completely different than steamed broccoli versus raw broccoli
Mm-hmm.
versus broccoli with cheese sauce on it.
Exactly. Exactly. That's such a great pearl of wisdom. Try it 10 different ways, not 10 different times
Yeah, because
in the same way.
parents get frustrated. Like, well, I've served this broccoli so many times, they just don't like it.
Well, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll even add in my own life, I used to think I didn't like mushrooms until one day I ate them with like sauteed with butter and salt. And after I did like them that way, then it opened up the gate for me to try them in other ways. And I think our kids are the same. Once they decide on a way they can eat them, then slowly you can start modifying that and changing the texture and changing what you're serving it with so that their palates just broaden and expand until they've fully accepted it.
Mm-hmm. And I think the other piece that works into that is that if a parent is pushy or pressuring their child to take another bite or bribing them to, eat the broccoli and then they get the dessert, all of those things sort of shoot the whole process in the foot. They don't work at all very well. I mean, they might get the child to taste, but over the long haul, they're not really, setting up a situation where the child is learning to like broccoli for the sake of broccoli. The child's learning to like broccoli because it's the easiest way out of the table or the easiest way to get dessert,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Like, what's our end goal here? And the other thing I will add, so the other night I made salmon and Brussels sprouts, which those two foods for kids are kind of like, oh, Brussels, like we've created this culture where like fish and Brussels sprouts are kind of off the table for kids. And so the salmon I made had like a honey garlic sauce on it that it was cooked in, and the Brussels sprouts I sauteed with garlic butter, and we added some cranberries, dried cranberries, and some other things. So they were getting all this variety of flavors, and my kids loved it. And I will say, like, the first time I served them Brussels sprouts and they hadn't really experienced that, they are for sure more hesitant. But now that they've had this positive experience, like, oh, I know that I like Brussels sprouts cooked this way. If I cook them another way, they're more likely to be like, oh, I've had this and I like it, so I'm probably going to like this way as well. And so,
or at least I'll try.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So that's a thing. And there is a study out there that highlights the fact that parents give up after about 3 to 4 offerings of that broccoli or whatever food they're trying to get their child to eat. They give up after 3 or 4 times. And we know that it takes a lot more exposure for children to really warm up. And some children, this is the other piece I think sometimes parents forget, is that some children just aren't ever going to warm up to broccoli. I mean, and that's okay. There are so many different fruits and vegetables and out there that your life is not over if you don't like broccoli or Brussels sprouts.
And I think
work around that.
I think we forget as adults, like our children, they're still developing in every way. They haven't had the same amount of exposure to different foods. And so in our minds, we think if we like it, they should like it. But maybe it's taken years for us to develop those different tastes and sense of it's okay to try new foods. I'm going to be okay.
Yeah. You'll survive. In fact, you'll be right here sitting in front of me 5 minutes later if you try it.
Well, and, as adults, we all have different food preferences. There's foods that we don't like. And I think it's, like you said, it's okay for us to accept that our children also have different food preferences.
And I also want to add, it's funny that we think of food that way, but we don't think of other things that our kids are learning to like that way, the same way. So, like, if I have a child who likes gymnastics, maybe it took her 2 months and suddenly she loves it. But just because she didn't like it the first time doesn't mean she'll never like it. But I also, from experience, when I first started Super Healthy Kids, it was at a time of blogging where we gave our kids fake names because it was just what you did in blogs. And I named my daughter the Flip Flopper because she would love a food one day and hate it the next. So it was almost in reverse. She, like, sometimes I'd be like, wait a second, you liked apples just yesterday, and so today you don't, and then tomorrow she did. And she was just the perfect flip flopper. And so even when they do accept a food, they might not accept it the next day because they're kids and they just like to be difficult. And then I have the benefit of hindsight as well because I have teenagers, and what feels like forever that they're in a phase where they don't like something, they always came out of it. They always, even if it took a few years of them refusing a food. Now, I couldn't imagine my 19-year-old not tasting anything. In fact, he is in Canada living right now. And so he's trying all sorts of food he never had at home. And, just because he can be adventurous now. And there was a time that he was selective. So it's just seeing it in perspective that kids grow up and they move on and
they evolve.
They do.
They evolve. My daughter, my oldest, is in Florence, Italy, living there
Ooh.
this semester. And same thing, she's trying all kinds of things and very adventurous. And when she was younger, she was my training wheels. She was a very tough toddler to feed and combined with a very strong personality. So they evolve, they come through it. And I think staying calm and having your end goal in mind and not sweating the little stuff that happens day to day, but really just having your goals lined up and sticking with them. And one of my goals was always to raise an adventurous eater, which meant that I had to show up with a variety of foods day in and day out. And that was just a piece of my goal that I knew I had to do in order to get where I wanted my kids to be.
Definitely. And, creating that food culture within your home, like you said, it's so much more important than sweating the day-to-day little things. And so you have to determine, we get a lot of parents that'll say, my kid will only eat chicken nuggets. And my question for them is, well, what if the chicken nuggets weren't in your house? Then what would they eat, And that's a food culture you're setting. Like, okay, we'll just fall back on the frozen chicken nuggets. But if those aren't there, kids will not starve themselves. They will, they'll eat what's in your house.
Mm-hmm. I do notice also, and again, part of this is I'm a seasoned mom. I've moved through 4 kids. I feel like I'm at the, crossing the finish line with my 4, and I can look back and see so many different things. But also in working with families, I just am seeing so much parents who don't take the helm and steer the family down the food road they want to go. They don't know how, and it's not to put blame on anybody. I think, today's parents are growing up in a weird scenario where there's an abundance of information, yet no training or preparation and no support, or they really have to actively seek out that support. And they oftentimes are getting these systems in place, these habits in place where the child's calling the shots most of the time, where the child, they're making chicken nuggets every night because they're afraid of what will happen if they don't.
Yeah.
Are you seeing that as well?
I'm seeing that definitely. I think there's a lot of parents that have a hard time setting boundaries, and the kids are able to graze on food all day, and they don't have an appetite for dinner. And it's just because sometimes it's just easier to let them snack. But I think what you said about in raising your kids that you just had to show up every day is right on, because we've decided that whether your kids are going to eat those foods or not, that you are successful when you provide it and when you serve it to them. And so, they're going to reject it some days and they'll accept it some days, but that doesn't change the fact that you're successful because you provided it for them.
Right. That's when I always say, pat yourself on the back. You did your job.
You did it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So, ladies, what is on the horizon for Super Healthy Kids this year? I know you've been working on some different things, so I want to make sure that my audience can hear everything that you've got going on.
Thank you. Yeah, we're really excited about this year. We just finished an app that we call Prepare, and it's spelled like the fruit pear at the end of it, so to make it easier to remember.
Very clever.
But the reason we put this together is because of this idea of connected cooking that we've been talking about. We want to have a space to make it easy for parents to get a meal on the table every day, to have a social component that they can get inspiration and advice from their colleagues, their peers, their neighbors, and even influencers that they might follow, that they have a place where they can keep their recipes organized, their meal prep, planned ahead of time, their shopping list, like everything they need to just get it done and make it happen at their house. And the more they cook together with their families and the more home meals they make, then the healthier everyone's going to be. And we specifically provide our meal plans on that platform because the way we've developed our meal plans is so that you do have ideas for fruits and vegetables at every meal. So you do have balanced, a variety of protein and a variety of whole grains and all the variety your kids needs, we've put into our meal plans and put them on that platform to make it easy for parents to carry it out in real life.
Which I think is so great. In my own practice and on my own blog, I don't do a lot with meal planning. I use you guys as my resource for my followers to, go and find interesting meals. And I'm so excited that you have this app because it certainly in this day and age makes it much easier for parents. They always have their phone and the kids do too. Now we need to have somebody make videos for kids to cook.
Yes, we actually do want to do that. And it's funny you said our kids have their phones too, because my daughter also has the app on her phone and she does make our meals some of the nights. And so she can pull it up. She knows what's on our meal plan and she has all the steps right there so she can make dinner happen even when I have to work late. So
That's
they
awesome.
love it.
That is awesome. I love that. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up the show?
No, just that we love what you're doing and we're excited to connect in this way and share our audience with you and you share your audience with us. We think that the more parents know and the better educated they are in feeding their kids, the more successful they'll be.
I completely agree.
I know you agree because I watched your TED Talk.
Well, thank you. Well, Amy and Natalie, it's been such a pleasure to have you on the Nourished Child podcast today. Thank you so much for being here. And I will be sure to include all your links in the show notes so everybody can find you and hopefully take advantage of your new app. I think that's so wonderful.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jill.
Take care. Well, there you have it, folks. I hope you enjoyed that interview. I certainly enjoyed meeting Natalie and talking with both Amy and Natalie on the podcast. And FYI, that was the first time I've ever done an interview where I was interviewing two people at once. So I think we did a pretty good job. Hopefully it's easy for you to hear each of them. You'll be able to find the show notes and the links to all of the Super Healthy Kids resources over on my blog, jillcastle.com/podcast. I really enjoyed hearing their philosophy about food and nutrition for children. They and I are quite aligned with that whole balanced approach to feeding kids and the job that it requires and effort on parents' parts, and just that philosophy of keeping it positive and kind of rolling with the flow, but not without a plan. So for listeners out there, remember, you do have to have a structure and a plan and a system. With that being said, I hope that you enjoyed the show. And if you did, I'm asking you to run on over to iTunes and rate and or review the show. You can do this on your phone. It's super simple. Tap your iPhone icon on your phone, search The Nourished Child, tap the icon that shows my show, and scroll to the bottom. And at the bottom, it'll say ratings and reviews. Click on that and you can give it a 1 to 5 star review, and you can write a review. That would be so helpful if you do it. The more reviews and ratings that this show gets, the more it pops up into the news feeds and the search options for other parents to be able to learn about feeding and nourishing their children well. As always, thank you for listening today and for being a part of the Nourished Child community. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, be sure that you grab that child in your life today, give them a big squeeze, and let them know how much you love them. I'll see you next time on the Nourished Child podcast. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Nourished Child podcast, where the #1 goal is to help you grow a nourished child inside and out.